Good evening. Welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Lens, presented by Jotnex Paranormal. I am Jamie Widener, and I have no idea where Jed Thomas went. He was right here, I swear, just a second ago. So hopefully he's going to catch up with us in a second, but I'll get us started. Why not? Hey, there you are.
Uh,
Woo!
I told you I had things all messed up, Jamie.
Well, that's all it takes is to press one wrong button and
Uh-huh.
everything just goes
And I'm on the wrong side, aren't I?
side. Oh my gosh, someone's going to tell us about that. I know, but that's okay. Let's do something different. Let's be bold, right?
Sure.
Why not? We can do this. We'll figure it out. Oh my gosh. Well, it's Tuesday, sir. How are you?
I am tired and I'm fighting allergies. It was a long weekend.
Right. Well, it's been a
Um,
long week, you know. We both had a theater event this weekend,
that's correct.
which was, and you had a lot more of it than I did, of course, but um, many shows to see between Thursday and Saturday. Five shows, six, four, five, six. I don't know. I saw one. That's all
Four.
I
Four.
say.
There were four. Yeah.
Okay. I know two Saturday. I guess they're Thursday and Friday. But anyway, great presentation by the Penn Manor School District of Big Fish, the scholastic version.
Uh,
Fantastic. Really, really good story. I've always enjoyed the story. I saw it as a movie many, many years ago. If you haven't yet, I do recommend it. Ewan McGregor, pre Star Wars, back when he was a dramatic actor and not just cool as, AF. But really, really good story, neat story, and the kids brought it to life wonderfully. So
they
great
did.
visuals, great acting, great stage set, lighting, everything. So really,
Yep.
really recommend if you get out to see it. But the movie's cool too. So
Yeah. The show was great. Like you said, they did a good job. I hadn't seen it before.
okay,
So I waited till I was
so
seeing.
you cried four times, not just once. Okay,
No, because I only actually saw the show once. So, but it was good. So, but want to say hi to Todd and Carmela.
hey, there they are, Jim. There you are too. Good evening.
And Jim says it's good to switch things up.
All
So,
right.
and Bert's here. So we're glad everybody's here. Um, Thank you for dealing with us last week when we had the issues and had to start over. And we fixed it all in post. If you watched it on the
Streaming services.
streaming services, you probably didn't even know there was an issue.
Yep.
So,
And that's funny. I just said this to Chad before we came on. Like for those who didn't know and seeing it elsewhere, hearing it elsewhere, you're like, what is he talking about? Like the issues, but
oh,
we actually literally dropped out completely, and came back in, of course, had to restart because nothing kept. And
yeah,
it was a problem with the server at our sponsor company. So, um, luckily we were able to get back and y'all stayed with us and thank you.
hmm
Appreciate it always, as always.
and Heather's here and Frankie's here. So the
Heather,
gang's all here.
man, I'll tell you what.
We were talking about what we had last week, Jamie, but we also have a big trip on Thursday. We're going to Penn State with Zoe
Yeah,
to see
accepted
Cosmic
senior
School.
day or accepted student day. Holy cow.
Yeah.
How did we get here? So,
So,
and decisions, big
mhm.
decision has to come.
So,
So,
and hopefully I have a voice by then. So,
well,
so Zoe may be happy if I don't. I don't know.
I'm not complaining if you don't. No, no. I hope you feel better soon. It's no. This is no fun. This time of year just stinks, and
Yep.
it's only going to get worse. Sadly, as more things bloom. It's gotten warm finally here, and at least in South Central Pennsylvania, it was like 65 and just absolutely gorgeous today. I take my lunch break as a walk around the neighborhood where my office is, and I didn't want to go back. I just didn't, So I did. So might have to eat and pay bills, but
Right.
if I didn't have to do that, I don't know where I would have went, but definitely stayed out for a while.
So, well,
Yeah,
I'll sit here and be quiet and let you talk about the topic for tonight, which
yeah. Let's get to it. So tonight we're going to talk about Tommyknockers, and no, 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 it's not going to be the Stephen King novel from back in the day. Uh, Although it was entertaining and fantastical, it is really about aliens as opposed to what true Tommyknockers are. Um, which I'll default to our friends over at Merriam-Webster, and they simply state Tommyknocker is the ghost of a man killed in a mine. That's it. Now I'm going to expand on that, and I think we're going to find out there's far more than that to it. So first of all, Tommyknockers have many names. And depending on where you are, wherever you are in the world, you might find them as something else. So in Wales, and Tommyknockers are generally from Cornwall and Cornish descendants. But in Wales, in the UK, they might be called the cobbly now. In Ireland, something you may have heard of before, Chad, called a leprechaun, maybe. In Kent, also in the UK, a cloaker. And around the rest of England and Scotland, they're also called the brownie, and not those delicious treats that we're so familiar with. Definitely not something there. But going out of the country, out of the UK, Germans have some history there as well, and they call them a Berggeister, which means little miners, because generally speaking, these creatures are said to be about 2 feet tall, or about 60 centimeters, and wear traditional mining clothes. They also have long white whiskers and beards, adding to their supernatural aura once they're seen in a cave or mine. Most reports suggest that they are mischievous, but not in a harmful way, as they would hide unattended tools, take a bite out of someone's snap or lunch, and extinguish lights occasionally. And nothing more fun than having your light extinguished when you're in total darkness afterwards. So, trying to find your way over to it, and especially in an era without flashlights or cell phones to give you that extra boost to get back to your lantern. This was true total darkness, and some believe they would lead you to a rich seam of deposit. So certainly not a bad mischief.
Okay.
Other is that Tommyknockers are the spirits of former miners who died underground, who are watching over and protecting those who are still working in the mines. So kind of a brethren spirit. Some believe they are of a more malicious spirit or nature, where they cause cave ins or collapses on miners who disrespect them. As a result, most stories agree that it would be dangerous to laugh at or ignore the Tommyknocker. It is said that to stay on the good side of one, miners leave a bit of their lunch behind or even have special cakes made as a treat for them. A lot of time it's saffron. Others craft clay figurines in the likeness of a Tommyknocker to appease them. Some slides of that as we cycle through all these. In some mines, where the Tommyknocker's presence was known to be overwhelmingly malevolent, the mines were forced to close because of the miners' fear of the spirit. Considering that mining is an ancient profession and that miners tend to be of a superstitious lot, it should come as no surprise that stories of the Tommyknockers were taken to the United States by miners from all over Europe. When the mines played out, legend continues, as many said that the Tommyknockers found work in the homes surrounding the old mine shafts. Superstition continues that many a family death or disaster was allegedly foretold by a knocking sound inside the house. And the coal mines of Pennsylvania were dark and dirty and deadly, and among the many stories, folk songs, and superstitions of the coal miners comes the legend of the Tommyknocker there as well. Here's an example. Late last night and the night before, Tommyknockers, knocking at the door. I want to go out, don't know if I can, because I'm so afraid of the Tommyknocker man. A poem by Ava Smith Carroll.
Hmm.
So you gotta get a little bit of everything here, right? Like they're
Hmm.
funny, they're mischievous, they're kind of malevolent at times. It's basically like a normal person
Right.
in a lot of ways. Everybody has a bit of a tinge of good and bad, depending
Right.
on their mood. Obviously, uh, being underground too, it's a bit sometimes disorienting, the unusualness of it. Although I will get to this in a second, but a lot of these folks were seasoned miners who had lots and lots of hours underground and working in these conditions. So the fact that how they took this was really a tell to their belief.
Right.
So it is believed that the lore of the Tommyknockers was brought to us in the 1820s by Welsh and Cornish immigrants who came to western Pennsylvania to find work in the coal mines. They believed the Tommyknockers were sprightly spirits who dressed like the miners and performed similar duties in the mines. When the California gold rush began, these experienced Cornish miners were most welcome band, often sought after by mine owners. Attempting to recruit more miners, managers often approached the immigrants asking if they had any relatives back in England who might come over to work the mines. The Cornish miners would reply with something like, "Well, me cousin Jack over in Cornwall wouldn't come, could you pay his boat ride?" Soon, there were many miners who took the nickname Cousin Jacks, formed the core of American Western mining folk workforce. As such, their superstition of the Tommyknockers thrived and spread throughout the mines of the West.
Hmm.
The Tommyknockers were so important to the Cornish and Welsh miners that many would refuse to enter a mine unless the mining company assured them that the Tommyknockers were there. The practice of saying Tommyknockers were on duty became commonplace among mine owners. Stories of the Tommyknockers quickly spread across the United States. Both friend and foe, tales of the Tommyknockers were used to explain the unexplainable. If a miner's light went out and they were stranded in total darkness, it was the trick of a Tommyknocker. Anytime a miner narrowly escaped a tunnel collapse, it was thanks to the Tommyknockers. So strongly was the belief in the Tommyknockers that miners would include the Tommyknockers in their strikes. In 1956, the owners of a large mine in California decided to seal the entrance and close the mine. In response, a group of miners circulated a petition demanding the mine owners open the entrance and set the Tommyknockers free so they could go to work in other mines. Surprisingly, the mine owners complied. Go figure. So it's a lot of quick stuff, but there's some stories that I like to share too.
Okay.
The first. One unlucky miner named Eddie became the target of a Tommyknocker. They drove him, of Tommyknockers, I'm sorry, plural. They drove him crazy, pelting him with stones, stealing his tools, blowing out his lantern. He couldn't figure out why the Tommyknockers had singled him out until one day he heard a voice calling to him from the dark opening of a nearby shaft. Eddie, I want my $5, the Tommyknocker said. Eddie was so startled he dropped his tools all over the ground. The voice sounded just like that of his old friend Joe, who had died in a cave-in a few months back. Eddie had borrowed $5 from Joe and had never returned it. Eddie went into the shaft, and sure enough, there was Joe Trewalney, his ghost, shrunk to the size of a 2-foot dwarf with a big, ugly head, large ears, and a crooked nose. He wore a peaked hat, a leather jacket, and water-soaked leather boots. The Tommyknocker was not pleased to see Eddie. Give me back my $5, Eddie, the ghost of his old friend demanded. I don't have any money on me, Joe, Eddie said, patting his pockets for emphasis. I've heard that before, said the Tommyknocker dryly. I didn't believe it then, and I won't believe it now. The Tommyknocker disappeared into thin air, leaving an uneasy Eddie to wonder what the ghost would do next. He soon found out. All day long, Eddie was plagued by the Tommyknocker. His ladder was shaken so hard he almost fell. The loud tapping noise of an invisible drill nearly drove him mad. He just missed being buried by a rockfall. And through it all, Joe's voice would haunt him. Give me back my $5, Eddie. All right, Joe, all right, Eddie finally yelled into the mouth of the tunnel where his friend had disappeared. I'll get your bloody $5. Abandoning his work for the day, Eddie made the long climb to the surface and took $5 from the money box he kept under a loose board in his bedroom. Then he climbed back down into the mine and stuck the $5 into a crack in the wall next to the place Joe's spirit had appeared to him. There's your $5, Joe, Eddie shouted, his voice echoing oddly in the dark tunnel. It's about bloody time, Joe said, appearing next to him and peering critically into the crack where the money lay. Are you going to leave me alone now, Eddie asked. The Tommyknocker grinned impishly at Eddie. Maybe, he said, as he scooped up the $5 and disappeared into the dark.
Interesting.
Interesting.
I see. I would have blamed it on his coworkers, and but not if he saw it.
Well, true. The next. This is a little bit longer, so bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a legend about the Tommyknockers. It happened nearly 200 years ago in the hills of Smokeshire, which is in the UK. There was a gold mine there. I've been to the mine. I know. The mine is abandoned now. Though there is still gold there, no one will mine it because of the Tommyknockers. They say that 3 men died there because they ignored the warning while 4 others escaped. The 3 who died were never found and the mine was sealed. No one would go back in there to work. Those who escaped told how they had been warned, hearing the tapping, and saw the gnomes as they raced toward the entrance just ahead of the mine collapsing. 4 heeded the warning, 3 stayed behind, mocking the others for their superstition. They aren't laughing anymore. I don't know how true this is, but there may be some truth to it. The legend of the Tommyknockers has been around for thousands of years, beginning in the tin mines in the days of the Roman Empire, when these creatures of the underworld took pity on the slaves who were forced to work the mines and warned them of danger and often helped them with their mining chores. Maybe it's all superstition. Then again, maybe it's not. Sometimes at night, if you sit quietly and listen near the entrance of this old abandoned mine, you can still hear the Tommyknockers at work. You can hear the tapping of their picks as they mine the gold that was left behind. Sometimes you can hear the faint echo of their voice beneath the hills of Smokeshire, and if you are lucky, and if you believe you may just find a small nugget or two, maybe some placer gold in the brook that runs down the hill below the mine that the Tommyknockers left behind. And the last. And I'm going to fully disclose that this is intended to be as tongue-in-cheek as it's going to sound. And I'll explain why when I'm done. Tommyknockers are an invasive species that is not native to the Pikes Peak region. The first recorded notation of their presence in Colorado dates back to the 1860s when Colorado was the Colorado Territory and mining was all the rage. That's where the species got its first toehold in the region. Like the cane toad in Australia, Tommyknockers found a perfect home in the state of Colorado very quickly. With no natural predators and hundreds of new mines dotting the mountains, Tommyknockers began to thrive. Caves and mines were the natural habitat of the Tommyknocker, where they originate from in Europe. There, Tommyknockers had several natural predators to keep their population in check. Not the case in our fair state. You will typically encounter Tommyknockers in caves and abandoned mines. They are small, humanoid creatures that live in the darker recesses of the caverns. It is very rare to catch sight of one unless you are deep in a cave system or mine, so unless you are an experienced spelunker or a very risk-loving explorer, the twain shall not meet. The most important tip to remember is if you hear the signature knocking in a cavern, you should exit immediately, as a cave-in might be imminent. The actual intention behind the Tommyknocker sound has been hotly debated for over a century. Some miners of old believe that Tommyknockers make the noise to save humans in the tunnels. Skeptics believe it is more likely that the knocking is the sound of the creatures creating a cave-in to kill trespassers. We think it's best to shut up, listen close, and run like heck if you hear them thumping about. This is from Wildlife of Colorado, Mischievous Misfits, and they also include some tongue-in-cheek descriptions of raccoons, skunks, bats, and tarantulas as well, which I thought were all very, very funny, but not something for here.
Okay.
Maybe another episode some other day.
All right.
So, conclusion. So, the couple things to discuss here, and we'll cover them. We'll give you some sources for all of this fun stuff, and then we'll discuss. First of all, I need to note that we are saying this wrong. The correct Cornish pronunciation is Tommyknockers instead of knockers.
Right.
The term is credited to the influx of Cornish miners, and the change likely came from, as I always say, Americanizing the word due to their thick accents.
Okay.
I find it fascinating. The key part of the Tommyknockers lore is that if you actually see one, you're going to die. Considering that there are no confirmed sightings, we must assume this is true. Given that miners are generally suspicious, it isn't a big surprise that the folklore of Tommyknockers was created to explain the unusualness of working far underground. Add the high element of danger involved in mining, especially in the age before safety standards and modern equipment, it makes sense that the Tommyknockers came to be known as a portent for bad things that were about to happen. And this is something we are not unfamiliar with, Chad. Many mothers use the fear of Tommyknockers to keep their kids in line and hopefully far away from open mine shafts. Go back to the poem.
Right.
And given its rich mining history, this is interesting. This I'm going to call it now, road trip. Okay. Given its rich mining history, Telluride, Colorado kicks off their 4th of July celebration every year with a tribute to the Tommyknockers. Telluride brings in every 4th of July with a bang, starting with fireworks at 6 a.m. sharp. This is an homage to the legend that says the Tommyknockers would set off an explosion in their mines at 6 a.m. as well. And again, road trip. So, I'm calling it. That's one we can get to.
Yep.
So, some sources, and there's a lot. AppalachianHistory.net, AmericanFolklore.net, mcm.org.uk, which is the National Coal Mining Museum of the UK, NorthCentralPA.com, ABCTales.com, LegendsOfAmerica.com, AspenTimes.com, Mix104FM.com, that's where all the hits are played, and PikesPeak.com, and finally TransCeltic.com.
All right.
There's some stuff here, right?
There is.
And the most interesting thing here to me is that there's a lot of legs on this. Obviously folklore,
Right.
but it's one that has gone on and on and on and on.
Right.
And even as modernization has come as far back as the 1950s, and we weren't working with picks and shovels anymore. We had true equipment. So, the mining technology and all the advancements, but the belief that there was still a possibility that a Tommyknocker was helping or hurting either way was really, really interesting. What do you think?
Well, it's definitely folklore. I'd like to believe it. I found it interesting. You said at one point that they used to leave them snacks,
Mhm.
and specifically, you mentioned saffron,
Yeah.
which is a very expensive spice to use.
Yep. I
Um,
agree.
so it wasn't just like they were leaving them bread and water. Like they respected them if they were using saffron.
Let's
So
say it this way too, and let's be honest about it. It wasn't the miner who was making the saffron cakes; it was the Mrs. Miner,
this is
right?
true. Yeah.
Who was really interested in making sure her husband came home safely every day.
Right.
And I think that's an interesting piece as well, because now it was a family affair,
Hmm.
to appease and protect, and
Hmm.
generally make happy, the Tommyknocker.
Right. And the story about when the mine was striking, they let the Tommyknockers go work at another mine. Like,
Yeah. Hey,
we're
all's
not.
fair, right? So,
Yeah.
or
What do
closing the mine
you
in
know?
general.
Yeah.
Eventually, there becomes the effort of diminishing return in the shaft.
Right.
It's just not worth the work anymore. And then of course it's time to move on, find another location, another load. Um,
Uh-huh.
and Bert has a fairly interesting comment: bribery,
Yeah.
perhaps, for those cakes. Of
Right.
course, yeah,
Right. So
whatever you want to call it, as long as the Tommyknocker's happy, I'm good.
yeah. So
Um, moving on to the next shaft. The idea in one the second story was that even though that shaft has been closed or sealed, there's still the belief that they're in there working, removing the last of the gold, or the rest of the gold that
right.
wasn't, valuable enough to, or hard enough. It was too hard to get.
For
So
us to get.
to the work, right? To
Yeah.
do the work to get it. So that's an interesting idea too. And I didn't I didn't connect the dots enough on this, and I probably should have. But the idea of in Ireland, them being the leprechaun,
Uh-huh.
instead of the Tommyknocker, where does the leprechaun get his pot of gold?
That makes sense.
You
Yeah.
know, maybe that's how, and
Hmm.
that's why he wants to protect it. He's worked really hard to get it.
Right. So
So
and the
I'll
story about the
leave
guy.
that to our resident Irish travelers, the Lynches, to tell me about that,
Right.
perhaps, but not sure. But that's a curious question for me. I should have
Hmm.
connected that dot. I apologize, guys.
And the story about the guy owing his coworker who had passed $5 and him collecting it is just that's intriguing. So
Sure. Well, there's two things that come to me on that. One is that the classic 1980s movie Better Off Dead, John
uh
Cusack. I want my $2. Like he gyps the paper boy. He chases him all over the place. He keeps popping up. Want my $2.
hmm
Uh, and two, it's kind of like not as graphic sense in as graphic a sense, but it's kind of like the Telltale Heart. He knows he owes this guy money. So
right.
is it really the spirit of his friend, or is it
Just
really just his guilt?
his conscience. Yeah.
It's racking him. So either way, it's interesting.
True. Yeah.
It's more fun, of course, if it's the ghost, but the
Yeah.
spirit being becoming a Tommy knocker for that matter, because obviously he was not in life.
Right. But there've also been stories of them leading miners to safety,
Of course,
or is that
because
just
they
gut?
got saffron cakes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Or is that just gut instinct? Like, when you work in a mine, that
yeah,
sometimes you know what's coming.
yeah.
So
I don't know if you showed this. I apologize. I was going through all of this, but Bert had a comment a while ago about his uncle being a miner for 30 years.
I didn't get that up, but yeah.
Let me show this. Per Bert Lynch, my uncle worked in the coal mines in Ohio for over 30 years. He ended up with black lung and passed in 2016. I'm sorry to hear that, Bert, but I can say the same. I had I have 13 aunts and uncles, and four uncles worked in mines in West Virginia. And the same idea that, they were down there, and they gave it up for quite a while ago. Obviously, they're old now, but they would tell stories around the campfire, of the weirdness of being in the mines and all that stuff. It's meant to scare us kids, and I think anyway.
Okay.
Looking back on it now, I wish we would have recorded or documented these along the way.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, too, the stories always changed a little bit every time they told them. So, mm, you know,
Right.
uh, that's how it works. But the
Were
idea,
they stories to scare you just to scare you, or were they to scare you to keep you out of mining so you didn't go into such a
a little bit of both, I think.
yeah,
The scare, especially when I was very young,
right.
kids were, 5, 7, 8, 10, whatever, in that young
Hmm.
window, the elementary school age. And then later on, I'm sure it was to divert us. But by then, they had all left that area and then
But,
moved up here into the Pennsylvania, South Central PA area as well. So
mhm.
I think that was part of it. It's just they don't do it. Um,
Right.
I guess there's there probably was some opportunity that was lucrative at a time, but as time goes on, the work wears you down,
Yeah.
and obviously the exposure to the elements, especially in the coal mines, the exposure to the elements of the coal will allow you to get that black lung or cancer in general.
Mhm.
And that's certainly not worth it in the long run.
Right.
The Lynches are going to next time over in Ireland, they're going to hunt a leprechaun and ask him. So I appreciate that, guys.
Right. I find this comment interesting too. We both went to put it up at the same time.
Oh, yeah,
Bert's uncle wouldn't talk about his time in the mines,
yeah,
which
yeah. And there's probably a reason,
Mhm.
and I mean, I obviously can't speculate, and I won't, but there was it's hard work. It's
Mhm.
serious work as
Since that
well.
happened, and it's like a lot of soldiers won't talk about their time
Yep,
in country,
exactly.
and
I was
like,
thinking the same thing.
yeah,
You're
it's
correct.
just
Absolutely right.
and that's something to respect, and
Yep.
they're there to do a job, and they don't have to want to relive it. So
Well, there are inherent risks anytime you go away from broad, wide open spaces into anything underground, or even out into caverns and such. Not mine shafts that are dug, but even open caves. In caverns like that, you always run an inherent risk of having something happen. The
right,
collapse comes to mind immediately. But just getting, well, I think of 128 hours, the story where the guy went hiking without telling anybody, slipped, got caught between two rocks, and had to amputate his arm
uh-huh.
to survive. Like all kinds of things can happen to you out in the wild, and without resources and connections and people around you,
Hmm.
you not come back. And
Well,
every day you went underground, you had the risk of that.
right. You're aware that I do the summer camp every year, and that's
Yeah,
out in uh, Somerset area,
sure.
which is not very far from the, and I can't remember the name of it. I think maybe it's the Deep Creek mine that there was a collapse several years ago, and we were at the summer camp when that mine collapse and rescue was happening,
Oh wow.
and it it didn't affect me, but there were people there who had relatives and friends who were in that mine, or Q Creek, I think it is.
Yeah, that sounds right. I'm recalling this. I
So,
couldn't remember the name, but that sounds more correct anyway. You can tell
so
me anything too, because I can't recall it, but I
right,
remember the
but
story.
but and I've driven past where that mine, because it's marked as where the Q Creek mine happened, blah blah blah. But I've driven past it several times, and it it hits hard when you realize there's things like that that are that close. So,
Yep.
but
Well, here in our area, and in southern, we're in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, so south central Pennsylvania is home for us.
mhm,
There is probably about 20 minutes or 30 minutes even from us in the southern end of Lancaster County. There's nickel mines, and I remember
mhm,
being a kid. We were able to go into those. They're not deep or big or anything like that, but as a kid, it was huge.
right,
Uh, and kind of scary and spooky at least.
right,
Like and it's not like you're walking into someone's home where there's amenities and lights and everything. I mean, there was string lights and so forth, and I remember correctly, there's probably a rail track on the center to pull carts in and out, but it wasn't anything extraordinary or
right,
elaborate. And that's really what these mines in the era that the Tommyknocker was most prevalent was.
right,
It was hand dug, it was carved,
mhm,
um, pickaxes and shovels and buckets and such, and wooden cribbages,
yep,
to support the shafts and so forth, and that's really where the the knocking and cracking sound was a lot of that as well. It wasn't just necessarily against the rock; it was the stress and pressures against the lumber, and that's part
right.
of the reason to put it up in the first place. Obviously, support because you don't want to collapse, but should something become overpressured,
It was a
the
warning.
the
Yeah,
wood would give you the tail of it,
yeah.
and therefore you had hopefully time to move.
Right. There's also an old silver mine in southern Lancaster County. I believe it's Silver Mine Park.
Yeah,
Um,
same thing, actually. It's a nickel silver mine, something like that. I forget the name of it, I'm
yeah.
sorry, but, it's still there.
Well, I know the
Unfortunately,
silver mine it was a Native American one, but it's now sealed off,
yeah,
and you can't go in it anymore. Or I
and
would have.
well, right. Well, there's in Mount Joy, right, not too far actually from where we are with the brewery, on the way to the Mount Joy Cemetery, if you go up the back way by the Votech school, you can turn right before, instead of going left up and around to the hilltop where the cemetery is. And there's a cave back in there that I recall being in as a kid as well, supervised, but and it
Right.
was one of those ones where if you went, you could go so far, and then once you started to lose light, then you had to have some resources, but it
Right.
went in a good bit before you lost light. So checking it out, kind of just climbing around, calling around,
Right.
but not, I'm adventurous. I'm bold. I think I'd say that I will go into places, but I don't know, like
Right.
some things, without someone being there first. Um, I went to college in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at the at UNM, University of New Mexico, and studied archaeology. And there was a lot of natural resources, a lot of Native American sites. One of the things that was that reminded me the most of this is there's a thing called Sandia Cave or Sandia Man Cave, um, on the mountain just on the east side of the city. And it's a back of the thing and a trek up and around to get to it. But the cave is a wide opening, and the point is there was a prehistoric man found there, Sandia Man, because of Sandia Mountain. Um, Back in the 20s or so. It's a while ago, quite a
Okay.
few years ago now, decades ago. And it starts as a fairly wide opening, which was a domicile. Someone lived there, this guy, and then hopefully his family. And then it gets really tight and really narrow and really low, and you kind of almost have to crawl to get through. And it opens again into a large chamber. And if you're claustrophobic or have any at all fears of tightness, you're probably not going to go much further. But it is well worth it to go beyond, because there's cave art, there's all kinds of stuff that's just now preserved, and it's an established place.
Hmm.
um, you certainly get the
Right.
feel for what it would have been being in prehistoric times there. Still very cool. Not a mining situation by any means,
Right.
but even there, people are finding ways. Once they empowered fire, that made this a livable place,
Right.
which is really
Um,
fascinating.
Here's a comment that Heather put up. Bert and I did a tour of Pioneer Tunnel coal mine in Ashland, PA. I could never do that for a living. It was way too claustrophobic for me. My heart was racing just taking a tour.
Yep.
I'm not. I remember taking a tour of a coal mine as well. It's definitely an experience that everyone should have.
That's
Um,
what we did around here as kids, though.
yeah, because it's like it's a resource that we all have used at one point or another in our life, whether we realize it or not,
Yeah,
because electricity was made from coal
yep,
quite often, especially in
absolutely.
this area.
Still is.
Still
It's up.
is.
Yeah, definitely still is. We saw
Um,
Brenner Island, the coal processing facility up on the Susquehanna, just a little bit north of us,
right.
right above
Um,
Bainbridge.
and there's blacksmiths used it. People used it for heating. I remember my grandparents
Yeah,
talking about the coal chute that they had in their basement from the street. That
absolutely. Well, you probably got a lot of it for Christmas through the years, so
well, we weren't going to talk about that, Jamie. Anyway, so it's definitely worth doing that, just to sense that temperature change from being on the surface and
yeah,
realizing that these people had to work in such a dramatic place. I don't know how else to explain it, but
sure. Well, it's a transition.
right,
You go, whatever's happening on the surface, whether it be fair and sunny or cold and snowy or rainy or
right,
whatever, you have no idea what you're going to walk out into coming up that shaft. You
right,
know, and, uh, you don't know if it's day or night in a lot of ways. This is an era of not having Apple watches and technology, so most folks would have had a pocket watch, and if
uh-huh,
it didn't get wound the night before or whatnot, it stopped. You don't know even what time it is.
right. And we think of an 8-hour shift, but coal miners,
Yeah,
that's they probably worked a lot more than that because
I would think that's true. And of course, I was about to say that to extend that thought too is that mine operators were going to work you as long as they physically could until you weren't able to go anymore. You
right.
know,
Well, and it wasn't based on
uh,
time, if I remember correctly. It was more based on what you produced in the day.
yes, and
So,
that's your benefit to stay as well. You want to go as long as you can as well, just to make sure you can meet your quota.
right. So,
With
Bert
no
said,
war, no pay.
right. Bert said nickel mine is in Gap, silver mine is down the road
Okay,
from them. And then Heather said that she grew up going to the Peckway silver mines She could ride the bike there. The neighbor kids and I would play in the mines before they closed them up. I could never go far back in them. Bert and I took the kids there to go hiking and ride bikes a couple of times. And I've hiked that trail, taken a lot of pictures back there. It's another gorgeous Lancaster County resource, but you definitely can't get in the silver mines anymore.
No, no, there's a lot of reasons not to.
So,
Right. And, actually, too, while we're on the subject, Bert in comments here, they have a coal stove in the basement of their home, from and the previous owners used. That's not unusual to find as well, the burner stoves and stuff was because that was heat, like you said,
right.
and, coal chute, somewhere on the side of the house where now the oil, if you have oil or your propane or whatever it is your heating element is, other than electric, whatever that wind source is probably right around where it was because there was already an opening and they just sealed it up and put in the end
Hmm.
pipe,
Yep.
whatever your resource is. And it's interesting because now the homes can't see them anymore. I remember, well, growing up in Columbia, a lot of homes had transitioned, but if you,
Hmm.
my line of work in the previous life, I got in to see a lot of old homes, and a lot of basements, and you could always tell where the traps were for the shaft.
Right.
It may look a lot different at the street level, but inside it really wasn't. There was definitely a slot, and there was definitely a receptacle area where it would, because a cart would show up, somebody would drop it in, leave a bill, on their way to the next. And a
Hmm.
lot of times it was done by wagon. Just so strange.
Yep. And then you had to shovel it into the stove and
Yeah, all the manual labor on top of it. Yeah,
clean up the mess. So, anyway,
yeah. We're well off point by saying all that, but
so Tommyknockers, yeah, I mean, it's definitely folklore history. Whether they actually existed or not, I don't know,
sure.
but people believed in them, and that's what was important. Because their beliefs in them saved their lives at times.
Yes.
So,
Well, and I think we've talked enough about folklore through all these episodes. And there's a lacing of it through a lot of this.
mhm,
We do, and more times than not, I think folklore is a comfort part to it. There's
right,
a comfort in it, for you
mhm,
as the person, and whether whichever way you believe, either way. But there's something to it that allows you to have an explanation for the unexplained and a connection to the place, that the belief that something is there beyond what you can physically
mhm,
see or touch.
yeah. I'm going to say something possibly controversial here, but it's funny how
You what?
folklore and religion have a lot of similarities where there's a belief there.
True that.
So,
Yes.
not
I
going to
don't
open that can of worms any more than that, but
All
I
right.
think it's
I see your
interesting.
point. Your well made point.
So,
And we have to believe for it to be real.
there's something that you have to believe in. Yep.
Yep.
So,
All right.
all right. Nice job, Jamie. Again, not a topic I had heard of before, so I appreciate being filled in on it. So,
Absolutely. That was a fun one to research too. And the the tongue in cheek tale of Tommyknockers from Colorado was the last thing I found. One of the last things I
uh-huh.
found, and honestly, I laughed as I read it. So I'm like, I have to share this one. But the idea that we have carried on this tradition of sharing the belief for thousands of years, and you're going back into Roman days, with slaves working mines, to current. We were
Uh,
talking eons of time, and the uniqueness is that the story hasn't changed.
right.
The idea is the same, the belief is the same, the good, bad, and ugly of it is the same. So there must be something to keep it going
Mhm.
and going and going.
So, Bert has a comment here about the same as believing in spirits, and that some usually are your ancestors warn you of danger.
It's a good
So,
point.
and then here's a new one, another one I haven't heard of. Jamie, do you know anything about this?
Oh, Tommyknockers kind of reminds us of the Mehune. Hmm.
Do you
Yeah,
know what the Mehune are?
I do not. Do
They're
tell.
a mythical race of small, skilled people in Hawaiian folklore, usually building impressive structures like fish ponds and roads, primarily working at night. So I think this sounds like another episode we're going to have to dive into.
I think so. Well, it kind of, in the sense of it too, takes me back to the Holder folk
Uh huh.
as well. The belief that there is this clan or gathering of these, subsized people that are doing their own thing. Like
Hmm.
they're doing things to make things better.
Right.
You know, the idea that in the mine shaft, at least, they're working to help people get, be safe, and obviously being a little playful at times. But the idea that the general belief is that they're there to help you.
Right.
And obviously the Holder folk were the same, the Menehune are the same.
Hmm.
uh, that's fascinating because we're talking about lots of different places of the world that
Right.
aren't necessarily connected, or
Right.
at least not very commonly.
Jamie, I think we need to put in the Paranormal Lens budget a trip to Hawaii to do some research for the Mahune.
And I blew the budget on Disney last year, so
Yeah. All
and
right.
then the Haunted Mansion episode. So I guess we just have to restock the
Yep.
coffer a little bit. But yeah, I'm in. Let's go.
So, all
Instead
right.
of road trip, it's plane trip. That's fine. Here it is. Yep. I
Yep.
have if it's Hawaii, I want a road trip or boat trip, plane trip. Either way, we'll get there.
And Frankie's coming.
Let's go.
And I have to look.
Tom.
I'll have to look for these next time I'm down in Disney.
Yeah, that's coming up, isn't it? There's a class trip somewhere this
No,
spring, isn't it?
November. It's in the fall.
In the fall. Okay, later this year. Okay,
So,
perfect.
so
Ah, well, there you go.
all right.
Magic of Disney, always
Mhm.
teaching us
Yep.
something.
So, well, should we talk about what's coming up for us, Jamie?
Sure. Yeah, let's
All
move
right.
on.
Next week, I'm going to be talking about the Dybbuk box, which, as you may find out, will tie into your next, your following week, paranormal hoaxes.
Okay.
So um, April 1st, Jamie will be talking about paranormal hoaxes because of being April Fool's Day. So it's good timing. The week after that, Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. I'll be talking about the history on April 8th. Later that week, we will be packing the car and driving down to the actual asylum and doing an investigation. So we will come back on the 15th with hopefully some experiences. Maybe some other investigators will be able to join us. We'll see how that goes. And then on April 22nd, we're going to talk about the Das House, which is a newer location in Pennsylvania. Shauna and Danielle Rigsby are going to come on with us and talk about the Das House. So I'm looking
Fantastic.
forward to that one, just to learn about a new place and find out about maybe a time that we could go there, see what's going
Absolutely.
on.
Let's get it done.
So there's that. Upcoming investigations. We unfortunately we will not be having an investigation this weekend, which we thought we were going to on the 22nd.
Yeah.
That was unfortunately canceled. But let's see. On April 10th, I said earlier, we're going to investigate Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. The 26th, we will be back at the brewery. Then May 17th, we will be back at the brewery for our Parent Unity event with Land and Legends Paranormal. Stacy was with us earlier, so we're looking forward to that. June 21st, public investigation at Brewby's Brewery. And then June 28th, you can find a bunch of us at the Haunted Crescent Sanatorium and Prison Paracon, which I'll have a slide for that in a minute.
Yep. We're road tripping.
We're road tripping. And Jamie, I think we're going to have stickers to hand out at the very least.
We will.
So,
Absolutely.
Join us there. Like I said, we're going to have the Para Unity event with Stacy and Gary Smith, Land and Legends Paranormal on May 17th. Join us for that. We're going to have, like I said, the Haunted Crescent Paracon and Horror Show. Look for it online. It's, you do a Google search for Paracon, and we will be there. So
I'm laughing here. I'm smiling. I'm trying not
yeah,
to laugh out loud. I'm reading some of the comments that are
yeah,
streaming while we're talking. But
yeah. I'm catching it out
Frank,
of the corner of my eye. So
Frankie validates Crescent is amazing. This is the one place that I have yet to be, and
right,
I'm every time we've been there several times as a team,
right,
and every time it's sadly it's mostly been weekdays for opportunities, and I just couldn't get away or can't get away as easily as others perhaps.
right.
So I haven't found my time there yet, but
And
I will. I'm committed to this, so I'm
Right.
definitely going to be there. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's some investigation opportunity after the Paracon. So
There is, yep. So
I'm looking
you're
forward.
allowed to wander the buildings while the Paracon is going on,
Okay.
and then there's a separate paid event afterwards.
Okay.
So
Fantastic.
we're gonna have to look into that, Jamie.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I'm waiting for this for quite a while, knowing we were doing it, but waiting for an opportunity at least to get back to
right.
or out to Crescent. I shouldn't say back, but out to Crescent.
Hmm.
So yay, let's go.
So
And from Todd and Carmela, FYI, Carmela said she can book you a trip to Hawaii. So for you and I, so okay, where do I sign?
yeah. So all right, and then our typical social media where you found us. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. If you have a comment about the show, you want to complain about my voice not being here tonight, I apologize. Email us at
Or just
paranormal
in general
lens.
about his voice when it's normal too. That's fine.
That would be paranormal lens podcast at gmail.com. Working on some other email addresses. Jotnix is working on a website, and when that's up, we may have a paranormal lens at jotnixparanormal.com. So
Ooh,
we'll
yeah.
see. We're getting there. We're slowly getting there.
Yeah,
As usual,
I
you
have
can.
to ask you something real quick. Is that you or Maggie squeaking?
That is Maggie. She came down with her toy.
Okay. Okay.
So my voice isn't that bad yet.
Our third teammate right there. So
So um, so yeah, check out Linktree, Paranormal Lens for all our links and socials and all that stuff there.
absolutely.
So I just want to thank everybody for joining us again. I appreciate you spending the hour with us, or your Tuesday evening. Um, Jamie, any final thoughts?
No, it was a pleasure to do this episode. Thank you all. We're always trying to find fun things and unique things to discuss and share. Um, oh, yeah, I should have stopped talking and said no, we're done. But here it is. All right, so Bert, I want to complain. You were on the wrong side. It took the whole episode, dude.
Yep, yep,
Come
it did.
on. It couldn't have bothered you that much. All right, we'll be on the right. We'll be on the correct sides of the right side. We're always on the right side, the good side of each other here. So next time,
Here we
promise.
go. Just for Bert. Just
Jeez.
for Bert.
All
So,
right. If I knew where that button was, I'd have pressed it too. Um, so many things here. Uh,
so
but the point I was trying to say is, we're always trying to find things that we find interesting first, but also things that we think you guys will too. So if there's something that you are interested in hearing from us or having us do, just reach out. And the email, Facebook. Obviously, you can leave a message if you're catching us on the streaming services. Leave a comment. We're in. We always will be in to do listener submission episodes. We've done several already. We'll do several more. We'll whatever, however many.
yep.
And self-produced, so we can move our schedule around. See a little time to research it and figure out what to do with it. And if it's your story, and something you want to share personally, we can have you on. So it's
Hmm.
easy. We know how to do that. So just feel free to reach out and touch base and keep it coming. We're here for you. Oh, there's Chris. Hey, Chris, welcome.
Yep.
Nope, we're both clicking buttons again. I'm gonna let
I
it
got
go.
it.
It's
All
free.
right. Yep.
Live
Um,
Gettysburg. Well,
yep.
all right.
Chris is with the orphanage and or the Jenny Wade House. I forget exactly which one. I'm sorry, Chris.
Both are great.
But part of our team was down there a couple weeks ago and had a good time. And
Yep.
I was there before that. And Chris is a wonderful person. Definitely recommend getting out there. So
Very cool. Looking forward to seeing you in the field soon.
so all right, Jamie. Anything else?
No, sir. I think I've got it all, and that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So, just thanks everybody for paying a little bit of your time tonight with us. We'll see you next time, and we'll talk about the Dybbuk box.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Take care.